Hi, Lori here with a quick overview of decision making to help you make better decisions both at work and at home. Obviously, the reason we engage in analytics in the first place is to lead to better decision making. As you'll recall from our graphic that shows that we collect our data, we analyze our data, we develop our insights, and then we move on to action. When we get to the action stage, that's when we need to engage in decision making. So we're going to go through 2 or 3 different theories today to help you better understand how decision making is actually done. And then we're going to apply it to an example so that you can practice it with me on the screen. And then I highly recommend you start practicing it in real life. It's a tremendous tool. I think you'll enjoy using it. So the theory we're going to rely on primarily is Zelany's theory of decision making, or anatomy of decision making. He's got 3 particular parts. There's the pre-decision, the final decision, and the post-decision. And we're going to talk mostly today about the pre-decision and the final decision. Post-decision is a hugely important area. We should always be looking back at the decisions we've made and determining whether they were good or optimal or not, and if they weren't, what we were missing or what we needed to do to improve our decision making so that our decisions in the future are better. But today we're not going to talk about that. That's a whole other class. Today we're going to just talk about pre-decision and final decision. So we're going to use the Bazerman and Moore 5-step approach, which is shown here. The most important part is the problem definition. If we don't get the problem definition correct, we are not going to get to a good decision. So if we're going to spend a lot of time on any one area, it should be on defining the problem so that we set ourselves up to make the right decision in the first place. The second step is identifying the criteria that we're going to use, the things that are important for us to evaluate each alternative on based on what we're trying to achieve. Then we're going to weight those criteria because some are going to be more important than others, and those weightings could change over time, so we need to be aware of that. And I highly recommend we review both the criteria and the weighting every time we make a decision. Then we're going to generate alternatives, and finally we're going to select the best alternative and make our decision. So let's run through this as an example so that you can see how it gets applied. So I'm going to define the problem, which is what to have for dinner tonight. And we're going to look at some of our options and then come up with the best solution. The first thing we do, step 2, is identify the criteria. For me, or for all of us, probably cost, convenience, whether we can walk or drive, whether we're going to have dinner with friends or not, how's the food taste, are all criteria. At different parts in our lives, those criteria might change. But I think those are pretty comprehensive, at least for this example. Then we're going to weight them. And in my case, my little bubble is over the scale on the right hand side, but the scale on the right hand side says taste. And for me, taste is more important, but back when I was a college student, cost might have been the most important thing. I didn't have a whole lot of extra money. Next, we're going to generate alternatives, and this is alternatives generated from the perspective of a student on campus. Could go to the dining hall, could have Subway, could have pizza, could have local pub food, or, from my perspective, I would also like to add other things. But because we have a situation called bounded rationality, we don't include all of our alternatives. So back up under this one, the prior slide, you'll notice that there was no dinner in Paris option. When in fact, dinner in Paris is absolutely an option if you have enough time to get there and back. But we don't consider that because we can't consider all the possible alternatives, or we'd never move off that step, right? So the concept of looking at just enough alternatives to feel like we've got a good pool of candidates is called satisficing, and it was the outcome of the bounded rationality theory provided to us by Dr. Simon of Carnegie Mellon fame. So we consider some but not all of our alternatives because attention is a scarce resource, and Now we've come down to all of our alternatives have been generated. We need to select the best one. So let's walk through how we would do that in our example. Our problem was what to eat tonight. We identified criteria of cost, convenience, taste, friends, etc. Then we weighted those, and we acknowledged that for some of us on this screen, the weight of cost might be the most important. For others, it might be taste. During the week, convenience is high on my list. I don't have a lot of extra time, but on the weekend, taste and being able to go out with friends and walk so that I don't have to worry about a designated driver would all be high on my list of priorities. And then we would generate our alternatives, remembering that we're not going to include all of the possible alternatives because of bounded rationality. And then we're going to evaluate those alternatives on each of the criteria that we identified and the ones that are most important, and the alternatives that do best on the criteria that are most important are the ones that are going to be in contention for our final decision. And eventually we will have to make a decision about where we're going to eat dinner, and our best alternative will be the one that had the highest ranking across all of the criteria based on their weighting. And that's it. It's a pretty simple process, really effective, and I highly recommend that you give it a try. Thanks for listening today.